the Canadians will be back in action on December 1st against Morocco to wrap up Qatar 2022. We know they're eliminated. We know they're not going to move on to the round of 16. But one more game to go that also matters to the group. And I know that a lot of people, Jordan, are going to say that this has already been considered a success for the Canadian men. They're back at the World Cup for the first time in 36 years. They get the historic goal. They held their own against Belgium. Like, they're 100%. There are so many positives. But we all know this group. You have friends on this team. All of us have interviewed just about every single player on this squad in the last 2 years. Moral victories do not satisfy them, right? Like, they want something. They want something tangible, right? They want to know that the 3 points are up there on the board. But let me just ask you this. Would a draw, even just getting a point, be considered a success at this World Cup?
A draw would. If you asked me in the beginning of the tournament, I would just say for this Canadian team, it was about showing that they could play ball out and be respected on the world stage. They did that in the first 45 minutes against Belgium. They did that in the whole game against Belgium. Now with Croatia, you have a bit of a setback. You're seeing quality. But what needs to happen is Canada needs to cram as much as they can in a short time. Get as much as they can out of this tournament. You don't play Morocco in CONCACAF. You don't play these teams at a World Cup. This is the time to get as much as you can and come away with this tournament with confidence, knowing what it's like at that level and getting points. So it's a success with 1 point, but I'm hoping the boys push for 3. Like, get a win, get that under your belt. Then you could say that you've played against a number 2 ranked Belgium and you should have come away with something from that game. You've now scored at a World Cup. You scored obviously another goal if they're going to win. And then you get a win. That's a great, successful World Cup for the camp.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Wheels or Ollie, go ahead if you want to go first.
I think if you want to call it a successful World Cup, the bare minimum is you have to win a game. And I understand the position this Canadian team is in. It's their first World Cup in 36 years. Obviously, there are different kinds of failure, right? This is not a failure, whatever happens against Morocco, where you're saying fire the coach and blow the team up and everything's in shambles. We all know that that's not the case. But I think if you want to call it a successful World Cup, they have to go out and win one game. And they got very close to doing that against Belgium. That we know will be another big milestone for the program, is getting that first World Cup win at the Men's World Cup. I don't know if that's an overwhelming success, because this team sets expectations even higher, right? And wanted to have a chance going into this match day of still getting out of the group. But I think, you can go home with a degree of satisfaction, at least, that there's been some success if you win a game. But a point for me, 1 point from 3 games, I'm not sure that they'll consider that a success at this tournament.
It's a difficult question to ask based upon expectations. I don't think a reasonable expectation for this Canada team was to go out and win a game. Perhaps pick up a point. I think it's more about how. Making sure that you have no regrets and leaving everything on the table and inevitably making a positive impression upon a country that's really jumped on board with this team. One of my old phys ed teachers in high school always told me you need to be a good starter and a good finisher, because that's how people remember you. They'll remember that great start against Belgium. If they finish strong against Morocco, put forward likewise that kind of effort, that will be the lasting memory, or the last memory that people are going to take from this game. So I don't think it necessarily has to be a win. Doesn't have to necessarily be a draw, but it has to be emphatic. It has to be entertaining. It has to be something that gets people standing up and taking notice of this team in a real positive way once again.
See, and what I'm hearing here, guys, is from, a fan perspective, the Canadian perspective, there are different ways to, they make the country proud in different ways for many Canadians to feel like it's a success. But we all know that the team itself, I kind of am in agreement here that if they don't get the full 3, I don't think they'll see it as a successful tournament, right? Like, there's just 2 ways to look at it. So I think they're going to want to go out there. They're going to want to get the win. I don't think that's me being Captain Obvious, PS. So, Wheels, when you're looking at this starting 11 against Morocco, by the way, we know Eustáquio came out of that game against Croatia with an injury. Today they were training. It looked like some of the Canadian media taking photos of him doing a bunch of stretching while everyone else was training. So I don't know what his fitness level is going to be like for December 1st. But then ideally, when you're looking at that midfield, who are you starting?
the best midfield that you possibly can. That's their way forward in this game. Amrabat in this Moroccan midfield is all action. They're very good. If Eustachio is good to go, if he passed all of his tests, if the sports science team within the Canada camp say he is good to go, Eustachio is a must start. Same thing for Atiba Hutchinson. If he's recovered, if he's able to give it a good go, if the sports science team deems that he is capable of hitting the metrics and numbers that are required, then he starts that game. If not, then you go down the list: Osorio, Kone, Piet, and then you fall from there. But I think your priority, if possible, is to get your best duo. And those are the two best players for Canada during qualifying in that position. And that was Atiba and Eustachio.
Okay. Play a little devil's advocate here, because I know you want to start your best. And I completely agree. Respect the competition, respect the tournament, respect Morocco. You go out there and you try to win. You're fielding your best. You're not handing out participation ribbons here. But at the same time, though, Jordan, are you not sitting there going, Atiba Hutchinson is not going to be here for 2026. So should he get the start, and is he still considered your best after what you saw in Croatia?
Tough question to answer, Andy. I think for me, if I'm Herdman, I'm going with a midfield 3 or 2 that I can see or work with moving forward in the future. So that could be a Kone or an Oso. But then I'm also thinking that we just don't have, or Canada doesn't have so many players to be that deep lying midfielder and maybe take it to the game. You could play Piet, but I feel like that's a not having Hutchinson or Eustachio playing, like, it's nowhere close to having our best midfield. So tricky, but I think when you're looking at the squad, you want to invest in guys that are going to be representing the badge moving forward. And we know like Atiba's had a phenomenal career. I personally look up to him as a midfielder. I don't know if we'll see a better one for Canada who has done what he has done, but you have to invest in the future. And I think this game against Morocco is really the first game to set up the future going forward. So
don't you have 3.5 years to do that? And there's a lot can change in 3.5 years.
But
like,
not that
Cup.
Experience. Not that experience of playing in a World Cup.
Atiba's ready.
Yeah,
if Atiba's ready, play him.
Yes.
Like there's still too big a drop off, I think, from Atiba Hutchinson to the next best player. Kone
isn't that a problem?
It's a big problem, and it's got to be a priority over the next 3.5 years. But I want to win a World Cup game, and Atiba Hutchinson, if he's fit, still gives us by far the best chance of doing that, in my opinion.
Well, then you're not going to like what I was going to say next, where, I mean, if Atiba's not going to be here 2026 and neither is Milan Borjan, do you start Dane St. Clair?
Oh.
No.
Anywho, let's move on.
No, you could say the same thing for Steven Vittoria across the back. Like, look, like you are at a World Cup. This group of players earned it to get them there. These are the players that you've leaned on. I think it sends a wrong message. You're like, oh, 2 games, we're flipping the page at a World Cup. No. Worry about that in the 3.5 years that follow. Who is going to give you the best chance to win this game? If that answer ends up landing on Ismael Kone or Jonathan Osorio, then you start them as well. But it's not about looking towards the future. It's playing for the now, right now.
Yeah. And I guess that's where the argument is, right? Who is the best, right now, given what we've seen over the last 2 games? When it comes to players needing to have a good showing here to feel good about their World Cup, Ollie, who do you feel that is in the final game?
Well, one who would make me feel good would be Milan Borjan. Speaking of, like, I just think I don't think he certainly hasn't cost Canada at this World Cup. I don't think he's made egregious errors, which we have seen from other goalkeepers that have been really costly. I'm not sure you can say on the other hand though that he saved them. Right, there were moments in qualifying where Milan Borjan literally earned the team points with key saves in big moments. I don't think he's necessarily been able to produce those in the 2 games so far. That's being very harsh on him again, because there's there haven't been massive errors, the goals he's allowed. But I would love to see that Milan Borjan, that inspired Milan Borjan, just produce 1 or 2 moments that give Canada a chance of getting over the line against a team like Morocco. We said before the tournament they're going to need him to produce that, I think, to win a game. We got one more chance here to see it. When you talk about, finishing in the right way, impacting the country in this game, I think Milan Borjan heroics would certainly make a mark.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, we want to see the chest pumping. We want to see like that Borjan who's doing this to everybody. want to see that
That's the
confidence,
boy.
right?
That's the boy we all love, right? It makes
Bring
for
back
the
the
one
track
time in my life.
pants. Put on the
Yes.
track
he needs them,
pants.
eh?
We need
Oh,
it.
he will sweat to death thinking that heat.
Air
Just come with
conditioning
scissors.
inside. You're fine.
Track
You're
shorts.
Who I
The
want to see
1980s.
have a good showing is David. I think it's one of the curse of being a striker, because if he scores one of these headers or one of the expected goals that he had, I feel like people would change their tune. But it's one of those things with a striker. It's like you could have a game where you're a bit off, but if you score, no one's really talking about how bad you are, or how sharp you're not at the moment. But I think that could really just put him in the right stratosphere, just getting that goal, knowing that he could do it at that level. And just being Canada in the future, next couple of years, I think we're set up top, like with wingers, with strikers, with attacking players. It's really just in the middle and the back. We would really need to get another group of players. But for him, I think he's deserved it, and I think that it would just be great to just put him in that spot for the next few years if he can get a goal.
Aside from answering every one of them, because they will be desperate for a good showing, a couple quick rapid fire selections. I want Kamal Miller to come up with a big game because of the way that the game ended last time out. He was so good in the first game. I want to see that kind of Kamal Miller performance in game 2. I don't think Eustachio has had a great World Cup because he's been injured coming in. We weren't sure about the severity, something I wish was articulated coming in. I'd love to see him go out strong. And you're right, Jonathan David, Kyle Aaron up top. This was the most dangerous tandem in all of CONCACAF through that at this World Cup. Just a step off. Distribution's part of it. I get it. But emphatic performance from those two guys who have been deadly over the last 2 years. I think that would sit well with Canada. And I think it would give Canada a good chance of coming away with the result as well.
I know there's one more game to go, but I, for one, am in the camp as well where I'm looking ahead. I'm trying to see what does 2026 mean for Canada based on this performance here, and the tough questions that we have to ask about personnel on the pitch, but also off the pitch and Canada soccer and so many other questions there. And John Herdman recently, Jordan, in a media availability in the game against Morocco said, it's about making this country believe we're headed in the right direction when he talked about what they need to do against this team. Do you agree with his comments?
I do. Just again, to piggyback what I said earlier, is that Canada has shown that they can play at the world stage and play attractive football. There's so many people, so many other countries that have gotten behind this team. Now, it's just about getting their style right, how they're trying to attack, how to control games. All these things, all these little idiosyncrasies of the game, they need to get right. So for me, this is a game at the World Cup at a stage like no other, where you have the perfect opportunity to get something out of it. So this is the first step for the next little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think he's right. But what I would say is that in terms of making the country believe in this program, the problem is not the team. The problem is everything else that's going on around it, right? And that is where I think there is a lack of faith and a lack of belief in this team going forwards, is that they're going to get it right coming out of this tournament to capitalize on what they've done and what's happened and take that momentum into 2026. So there's a lot of different things, too much to get into here in that respect, but we got to figure that stuff out quickly. Still don't have a contract, right? Like, let's start there.
Yeah, I'm less worried about that, but I think you touch on something. Just those negative stories that have crept in, they need to be silenced by a really good performance and professional activity, both on and off the field, heading into this game. You have to end on a high here, but I will say this: Canada does believe in this group. I think they do believe in the direction of this team. That's why record numbers have kind of followed this team. And if you're new to this journey, if you weren't convinced by what we saw over the last 2 years getting to this point, then I'm not sure what will convince you. This team is likable. They're young. They're built with a level of confidence and bravado that we've never had in this country when it comes to soccer before. I'm believing, and I think that the majority of the country is with me right now. So I don't think they need to go above and beyond. Just keep on doing what they're doing. They've made this country proud, and go out there with one final game to just put that exclamation mark on what these last 2 years have been all about and how successful they've been.
Yeah, when you look at the last 2 years, Wheels, I'm totally in your camp as well. There's so much to be proud about. But even what John Herdman is talking about, like headed in the right direction, to me, that has a lot to do with, can the federation secure the top matches against top opponents to get them ready? Can they get this contract right? And by the way, I'm going to drop another doozy on you that maybe we could discuss at another time. But I mean, we're also just assuming John Herdman's still going to be the coach in 2026. He's a really good coach. European eyeballs have been on him. So all I'm saying is Canada Soccer going to do the right thing to keep him around? Because we're also assuming he's going to be here in 4 years. I'm not saying he isn't, but I'm not saying he is either.